Good evening. I'm coming to you tonight with a developing story that's raising serious questions about promises made to thousands of federal law enforcement officers who signed up to serve their country. What we're seeing unfold is a situation that could have significant implications for immigration enforcement operations across the United States. This is a story you need to hear, and I'm glad you're here with George Will Direct to get the full picture. Over the past year, the Trump administration launched one of the most aggressive federal hiring campaigns in recent memory. The goal was ambitious: recruit 10,000 new immigration and customs enforcement agents to carry out the administration's immigration enforcement agenda. The incentives were substantial. According to multiple news organizations, including CNN.com, potential recruits were offered signing bonuses of up to $50,000, student loan forgiveness, enhanced retirement benefits, and competitive salaries. For many Americans, particularly those with military or law enforcement backgrounds, this seemed like an opportunity of a lifetime. The administration received more than 220,000 applications and ultimately hired over 12,000 new agents, according to official Department of Homeland Security figures published in early January. But now, according to reporting that has emerged from multiple credible sources, many of these new agents are speaking out, and what they're saying is troubling. Posts reviewed by the International Business Times on social media platforms, including unofficial forums for deportation officers, paint a picture of confusion, frustration, and broken promises. One post that was reviewed by journalists read, "Been here for about 2 months, still waiting for my health insurance. Is anyone having that issue as well?" Another agent wrote, "Man, Monday is 4 weeks since I started and I haven't been paid yet." Perhaps most concerning was a post from an agent who wrote, "They told me they don't know how long it'll take to have health insurance take effect, and I have a sick daughter with no insurance." Before I continue, I want to take a moment to speak directly to you. I'm an older journalist, and I'm currently without a traditional job. What keeps George Will Direct running is your support. If you find value in this kind of independent, fact-based reporting, I'd be grateful if you'd consider supporting this work through Buy Me a Coffee. Your contributions, no matter how small, allow me to continue bringing you stories that matter, stories that are thoroughly researched and responsibly reported. There's no pressure, but if you're able to help, it means the world to me and to the future of this channel. Now let's get back to the story. According to CNN.com, which published an in-depth investigation into ICE's hiring surge, the rush to onboard thousands of agents in a matter of months left the agency ill-prepared. Multiple sources told CNN that the Department of Homeland Security cut corners, conducted only provisional background checks with promises of fuller vetting later, and eliminated the interview process that had previously been standard. One administration official, speaking to CNN on the condition of anonymity, described the situation bluntly, saying, "It's a shit show." The consequences of this rushed process have been significant. CNN reported that in some cases, individuals with pending criminal charges showed up at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center in Brunswick, Georgia, only to be sent home when those issues came to light. In another case, a Drug Enforcement Administration informant was conditionally offered a job with ICE before the DEA caught the error and contacted ICE officials. Human resources departments, according to sources, were giving unclear or contradictory instructions to new recruits about where to report, when to show up, and even how much they would be paid. The Federal Emergency Management Agency had to assign some of its own staff to assist ICE's overwhelmed human resources operations. Training was shortened to just 47 days, down from previous standards. And perhaps most troubling for operational readiness, more than 200 recruits have been terminated from the training academy for failing to meet physical or academic standards. These individuals were sent back to field offices where they could be assigned administrative work, meaning they're still receiving federal pay despite not being qualified for enforcement duties. According to the investigation by CNN.com, this chaotic hiring process became a source of tension in a multi-agency meeting earlier this year, with White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller, who has been the driving force behind the administration's deportation agenda. Miller reportedly expressed frustration with senior ICE officials over the slow pace at which new recruits were hitting the streets to make immigration arrests. Now, I want to be clear about something. This isn't about politics. This isn't about whether you support stricter immigration enforcement or oppose it. This is about basic accountability. When the federal government makes promises to recruit citizens, promises of compensation, benefits, and support, those promises must be kept. These are individuals who left other careers, relocated their families, and put their trust in their government. Many of them are veterans. Many of them have law enforcement experience. They signed up to serve. The reporting from rawstory.com, which reviewed additional social media posts from apparent ICE agents, noted that some recruits claim their five-figure signing bonuses have not materialized. When you're talking about bonuses that could be as high as $50,000, and when you're talking about people who may have made significant life decisions based on those promised payments, the failure to deliver isn't just an administrative hiccup. It's a breach of trust. There's another dimension to this story that deserves attention. According to independent journalist Ken Klippenstein, who has been tracking ICE's expansion, the quality of some recruits has raised eyebrows even within the agency itself. One senior ICE agent described many of the new hires as idiots. A recent ICE recruit told Klippenstein on the condition of anonymity, "A lot of the guys are honestly pretty sketchy. I thought federal agents were supposed to be clean-cut, but some of them pass around a flask as we're watching a suspect." If those accounts are accurate, and I emphasize that these are second-hand reports that we're treating with appropriate caution, then the implications go beyond just payment delays. They suggest that in the rush to meet hiring targets and fulfill campaign promises, the administration may have compromised the standards that are supposed to ensure federal law enforcement officers are qualified, trustworthy, and professional. This isn't the first time a federal agency has attempted a massive, rapid hiring surge. According to a 2012 Government Accountability Office report, U.S. Customs and Border Protection undertook a similar expansion in the late 2000s, increasing the number of officers and agents along the southern border by nearly 10,000 between fiscal year 2006 and 2011. That expansion, which took place over several years rather than months, led to significant problems. The GAO report found that the rapid hiring amplified the incentives and opportunities for corruption. The report specifically noted cases of infiltrators, individuals who pursued employment at CBP solely to engage in activities that compromised the agency's mission. Sarah Pierce, director of social policy at Third Way, a think tank, told CNN, "We already know how this is going to go. We already know what happens when you hire a law enforcement agent with this speed and with this attitude. History, it seems, may be repeating itself, but at an even faster pace." Now let's step back and look at the broader context, because this story doesn't exist in a vacuum. During his campaign and throughout his second term, President Trump has made sweeping promises about the American economy, about prices, about jobs. Let's examine how some of those promises have measured up against the actual data. According to factcheck.org, a nonpartisan fact-checking organization affiliated with the University of Pennsylvania, job growth slowed significantly during Trump's first year back in office. Between January and December of 2025, the economy added only 473,000 jobs. That's barely more than 1/4 of the 1.78 million jobs added in the 11 months before Trump took office. The unemployment rate, which was 4% when Trump was inaugurated in January 2025, had risen to 4.4% by December. While that's still historically low, the trend is moving in the wrong direction. Manufacturing jobs continued to decline, with a loss of 63,000 jobs during Trump's first 11 months in office. And here's a particularly significant data point. When Trump took office, job openings outnumbered job seekers. By December 2025, that had reversed. There are now 7.5 million unemployed Americans seeking work, but only 7.1 million job openings. What about grocery prices? This was a central theme of Trump's campaign. He promised repeatedly that food costs would come down under his administration. On Tuesday, during a speech in Detroit, the president said, and I'm quoting here, "Grocery prices are starting to go rapidly down." But according to data released by the Bureau of Labor Statistics and reported by the New York Times, that statement is false. The cost of food at home rose 2.4% overall in the 12 months ending in December and rose 0.7% in December alone. That single-month increase was the fastest since October 2022. Professor Ricky Volpe, who teaches in the agribusiness department at Cal Poly and formerly worked at the Department of Agriculture, told the New York Times, "This does hammer home the point that when the current administration claims that grocery prices are down, that is, of course, not correct. Specific items have seen dramatic increases. Beef prices are up 16.4% over the past year. Coffee prices have jumped 19.8%, lettuce is up 7.3%, and frozen fish 8.6%. Now, to be fair, not all food prices are rising. Egg prices, which became a campaign issue, have dropped sharply over the past year. But overall, the data is clear. Grocery prices are not going down. For low-income families, this continued inflation in food costs is causing real hardship. Middle-class shoppers are increasingly feeling the pinch as well. Why are food prices still rising? According to experts interviewed by the New York Times, there's no single reason. Weather patterns, supply chain issues, labor costs, fuel prices, and changes in consumer demand all play a role. But some of the administration's own policies may be contributing to higher costs rather than lower ones. Tariffs on imported goods, including food products and agricultural inputs, add costs that are often passed on to consumers. Immigration enforcement actions have created labor shortages in agriculture and food processing, sectors that rely heavily on immigrant workers. These are complicated economic realities that don't lend themselves to simple campaign slogans. So where does all this leave us? We have a federal agency that has hired more than 12,000 new agents, many of whom are reporting that they haven't received promised bonuses, haven't received health insurance, or in some cases haven't been paid at all for weeks. We have an administration that continues to claim economic victories that the data doesn't support. And we have American families, including the families of these new federal agents, who are struggling with the reality of their daily expenses. The question that needs to be asked and answered is this: what is the plan to fix these problems? The Department of Homeland Security, in a statement to CNN.com, dismissed concerns about the recruiting process. A DHS spokeswoman said the department was maintaining high fitness and training standards and characterized news reports as cherry-picking individual cases. The statement noted that more than 85% of new officers are experienced law enforcement officers who have already completed a law enforcement academy. But that response doesn't address the fundamental concerns. Even if 85% of recruits are experienced, what about the other 15%? Even if most agents are receiving their pay and benefits on time, what about those who aren't? When you're dealing with thousands of federal employees, many of whom are armed and have significant law enforcement powers, most isn't good enough. Every single agent deserves to be paid on time, to have health insurance as promised, and to receive the bonuses they were offered. There's a larger principle at stake here. Trust in government institutions is already at historic lows. When federal agencies make promises to recruit citizens and then fail to keep those promises, it erodes that trust even further. It sends a message that the government doesn't have its act together, that bureaucratic incompetence is acceptable, and that individual citizens don't matter as long as the broader policy goals are being met. And let's talk about the agents themselves. These aren't abstract statistics. These are real people who made life-changing decisions based on commitments from their government. Imagine being the agent who wrote about having a sick daughter with no health insurance. Imagine the stress, the fear, the anger. Imagine being 4 weeks into a new federal job and not having received a single paycheck. How do you pay rent? How do you feed your family? These aren't trivial concerns. These are the kinds of situations that can push people to desperation. There's also a security dimension to consider. If reports about the quality of some recruits are accurate, if background checks were indeed rushed and corners were cut, then we have federal law enforcement officers on the streets who may not have been properly vetted. That's not just an administrative problem. That's a public safety issue. It's also a national security issue, particularly given the history of infiltration attempts in federal law enforcement agencies. The Government Accountability Office report on the Customs and Border Protection expansion in the late 2000s specifically warned about corruption risks when hiring is done too quickly. That wasn't abstract theorizing. It was based on actual cases where individuals sought federal employment specifically to compromise the agency's mission. There's no reason to think ICE would be immune to similar risks, especially given the even faster pace of hiring. I've been covering news for many years, and one thing I've learned is that shortcuts in government operations almost always come back to haunt us. You can't rush the careful, methodical processes that are supposed to ensure quality and integrity in federal hiring. You certainly can't eliminate interviews, speed through background checks, and hope for the best. The consequences of those decisions are now becoming apparent. As we approach the first anniversary of President Trump's second term, it's worth taking stock of the gap between promises and reality. The promise was 10,000 new ICE agents fully trained and ready to enforce immigration laws. The reality appears to be an overwhelmed system struggling to process recruits, some of whom aren't getting paid or covered by health insurance. The promise was lower grocery prices. The reality is prices continuing to rise at rates that are hurting American families. The promise was job growth and economic prosperity. The reality is slowed job creation and rising unemployment. Now, I'm not here to tell you what to think about these facts. I'm not here to advocate for one political position or another. My job and the mission of George Will Direct is to present you with verified information from credible sources and to ask the questions that need to be asked. Your job as an informed citizen is to process that information and draw your own conclusions. What I will say is this: accountability matters. Truth matters. When government officials make claims that are contradicted by official data from their own agencies, that needs to be pointed out. When federal employees who signed up to serve their country aren't receiving the compensation and benefits they were promised, that needs to be investigated and corrected. When policies are implemented so hastily that quality and integrity are compromised, that needs to be acknowledged and addressed. The situation with ICE hiring is still developing. We don't yet know how widespread the payment and insurance problems are. We don't know whether the administration will take steps to rectify the situation. We don't know what the long-term consequences will be for immigration enforcement operations or for the morale and effectiveness of ICE as an agency. These are questions that deserve continued scrutiny from journalists, from Congress, and from the American people. What we do know is that thousands of new federal agents are expressing frustration and concern. We know that the hiring process, by multiple accounts from credible news organizations, was rushed and chaotic. We know that some recruits aren't getting what they were promised. And we know that this is happening at the same time the administration is making claims about economic improvement that aren't supported by the data. Before I close, I want to return to something I mentioned earlier. This channel, George Will Direct, exists because of you. I'm an older journalist without the backing of a major news organization. I don't have corporate sponsors or political benefactors. What I have is a commitment to responsible reporting and the support of viewers like you. If you found this report valuable, if you appreciate the time and effort that goes into verifying facts and presenting them clearly, I hope you'll consider supporting this work through Buy Me a Coffee. Your contribution, whatever you can afford, helps keep this kind of independent journalism alive. It allows me to continue dedicating the time necessary to research these stories thoroughly and present them without fear or favor. And to everyone watching, whether you're able to contribute financially or not, I'm grateful for your time and attention. In an age of sound bites and sensationalism, choosing to watch a detailed, fact-based news report like this one is itself an act of civic responsibility. You're choosing to be informed rather than just entertained. You're choosing substance over sensation. That matters more than you might think. As this story continues to develop, George Will Direct will stay on it. We'll be watching to see whether the payment and insurance issues are resolved. We'll be monitoring the performance and conduct of the newly hired ICE agents. We'll be checking whether the administration's economic claims align with the actual data. And we'll continue to bring you that information in a clear, honest, and responsible way. This is complex stuff, and it doesn't lend itself to simple narratives or partisan talking points. The truth is usually more complicated than we'd like it to be, but complicated truths are still truths, and they're worth understanding. That's what we're here for. That's what we'll continue to do. Thank you for watching George Will Direct. Thank you for demanding better from your news sources. And thank you for being the kind of person who wants to understand what's really happening in your country. I'll be back soon with more reporting on the stories that matter. Until then, stay informed, stay skeptical, and stay engaged. Good night.